It's just interesting because I've driven this so many times, but it's gone. Our whole neighborhood's gone. It has a major effect, and I feel it, but I also am feeling this heart for all these people in the ministry, and I think that this is an opportunity like we've never had before. If I were in their shoes and I didn't have the hope, that anchor of hope that we have in Christ, what would I do? Let's start loving these people where they are, the way Jesus did, and do it with Jesus style, and let's use Jesus values, but let's do it together.
So Metro Cafe 3.0, Metro Church 3.0, Metropolis 3.0, Metro Mobile now.
Yeah.
It's not going into the community, it's becoming part of the community.
Oh, that's good.
It's becoming the community.
That's it. And I think it's every day is a new adventure, and we don't know what's going to happen.
Welcome to Beyond the Plate. I'm Paul Jacobs, where food is more than just a meal. It's a powerful way to connect, inspire, and transform.
We call it tertulia, a gathering where bonds are formed and stories are shared.
Get ready to dive into real stories that inspire, challenge, and nourish the soul.
I'm Daniel Patiño, inviting you to join our tertulia and explore how food and connection can truly transform lives.
Let's go Beyond the Plate.
Why are we not in our studio?
They moved us out of our studio for a good reason, and I'm liking this one a little bit better.
Well, first of all, we're not like a couple of miles away from home. We ended up in California. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond the Plate. I'm your co-host, Paul Jacobs.
And I'm co-host, Danny Patino. And yes, we're not at home.
Yeah.
But it feels like it.
This is amazing. First of all, for those of you that follow Beyond the Plate, a number of months ago, we had the pleasure of interviewing this amazing gentleman, Pastor Stephen Snook. He's not only a pastor out here in California, but he's also part of the Food for the Poor family. And we talked about his background, his vision, what God gave him for California to reach the community. But now, for those of you that have been following the news, you've seen the LA wildfires. You've seen so much that has gone on in this community. And God has turn the tables a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But we have the blessing and honor to have this special edition of Beyond the Plate here at Moss. Simply Moss. I love that. It's like Cher or Sting, right? It's Moss. And we have another guest with us today, and this is Savannah Aubinoe. Did I get that right?
You got that right.
Yes, I've been practicing for the last 3 minutes. But welcome, Savannah, to Beyond the Plate. We're so grateful to have you.
So grateful for you guys coming here on such short notice and such insane times right now in LA, and it's a blessing to have you.
Well, I think when we finish this episode, we're going to find out that a lot of this was God ordained. Not insane, but God ordained, because I think God can take, his scripture says, he can make beauty out of ashes. And I really believe that literally is taking place right now. But I have to start with, how did this all happen? I mean, how did we end up in this amazing podcast studio with you both? Something happened that connected you two. And that is the first story we want to get before we get my notes are like, for example, I want to hear about the vision you had, the dream you had, and how that brought the two of you together to enable this opportunity today.
3 days ago, I needed a little normality for my wife and I. We're in a hotel, and she loves having in the morning some good tea. And I was like, I'm going to get her a kettle. I want to do a pour over. So I'm going to go get this kettle, and I'm going to get a good one. And so I knew that I could get it at this place called Fellow over here. So I'm walking down the street, and part of this, some things start happening. One of the stores draws me in and says, we got some clothes, you want it? I'm talking about a kettle. And then the kettle thing comes out, and then they said, well, there's this place that also has some stuff over there, and it's called Moss, and it's right around the corner. So I'm like, okay. And so I decided I'm just going to go with this. And so I walk over here, and they're like, welcome. And they're like, are you a victim of the fire or something? I said, yeah. And they go, look, all this is yours. Just come in. And they said, and I said, I also heard this is a co-working space. I lost my place to work. I'm going to need a place to work. And they said, well, come in. I'm like, okay. And there's something special about this place. But you need to meet. And then walking down the stairs is Savannah. And she just welcomed me. And I said, well, tell me the story. And she began to tell the story that you're going to hear from her about what has happened in the last 2 weeks. that is really an amazing story of one person who was willing to say, let's do this, and step out and then watch what God could do in the middle of that. And so, but the story goes on because we began to talk, and she said, what's your story? And then out of that, she starts opening her heart, and she was very open and vulnerable, which was really meaningful to me. And listen to me while she's making me a pour over of good coffee. And then we started.
With a fellow pitcher.
With a fellow pitcher, yeah. And so the whole thing is, I'm like, wait, this is all coming together. But the beauty of it was, in the middle of that, I said, we're trying to get together some of our neighbors because we lost our whole neighborhood. And she said, well, how about Sunday morning here? Bring them together here. And immediately she said, Sunday sessions. Mm-hmm. And she said, do you want to do it? And then we talked a little bit more. I'm like, yes. And so we're like, to gather some of our neighbors who really grieving over this loss. But to watch, there was like filled with people, all these people here, down below, above, and they're just coming in and they're all serving. And then that number, 700 people that have been serving up to that point. And then the guy comes in and said, oh, it's at 1,000 now. So I was like, what? And they're distributing and taking all these. This is amazing, but she's got to tell that story. But that's how we met.
Okay, so
2 days, 3 days ago, whatever.
Wow. So, Savannah, before we get to January 7th, when the fires started, before we get to a few days ago, before you met Pastor Stephen, what were you starting here? What was going on here with Moss?
Moss has been open for 10 months, and the intention behind it is an intention that stems from Ikigai, right? So it's what the world needs, what I was passionate about, which was wellness combined with co-working in a model that I had never seen exist anywhere else. In fact, I went to New York before we opened the co-working mecca of the country, and I didn't find anything like this. And it was coming out of the pandemic, people really were craving community, but there was this sort of like invisible wall between people. Like you were sort of, it was seen as like a fear response when you would meet a stranger. And so, but apps were taboo. So this place that people could gather, a passion space for me, which was like operations mixed with design, mixed with wellness, what you can be paid for, and on my own terms. And then I guess, just sort of stemming from what the community was really asking me for also. I was taking notes about the downfalls of coffee shops and uncomfortable seats and lack of outlets and bad coffee. Co-working spaces feeling too exclusive and really understanding that exclusivity doesn't really serve a purpose in this world anymore. And that was sort of more of like the vibe for social clubs in like 2015, 2016. So what does a place look like where you can curate the events, where events are a part of the membership, where wellness offerings can be affordable and accessible for people, and where co-working doesn't have to be so sterile? So I called my good friend who's a professional interior designer named Sakura Heffron. She's Japanese, and she taught me about wabi-sabi design, how the way that we can curate a space and how it can appeal to our senses can really impact our lives and impact your relationships and impact how people feel before, during, and after an event or co-working day. So we've hosted around 150 events in under a year.
In 10 months, 150 events here.
Wow.
We have member-led events. We have private events. We have over 100 members. We've done, and it's just become an essential part of the community. And then the past week takes that to a different plane than I could have ever imagined. And I'm still processing what just happened, but I have a very strong intuition that it's a reason that it exists in the first place.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward now. Let's really start at what is the reason why we're here, January 7th. the fire is raging in Pacific Palisades. It is knocking at the doorstep, and literally, of Pastor Stephen, and many that I'm sure are here enjoying the wellness in this space. But it's now taken to another level. What did you experience? What was it like first for you when everything shifted? It was not just wellness as usual, and forgive me for being flippant with that comment, but I really mean it was, you had a plan, but then this fire and wildfires took it to another level, as you said.
It was interesting because people noticed the change in the air a couple of days prior, and I haven't really heard that many people talking about it, but the weather was like 75, 80s in January. And people were posting about how insane the weather was, and it was almost like a switch flipped of just this like summer breeze. And then I woke up, kind of was feeling in a strange, it wasn't like the best morning. Walked outside with my dog, was taking her on a walk, and then exactly at 10:30, we're on the beach, and I just start to see this one billow of smoke. And it was coming, at this point, there wasn't that much smoke where you couldn't see where it started, and I could see it was like smack in the middle of the Palisades Hill. And it's one of those things where you're just like, okay, this fire started, there's homes around, someone has already called. Someone has already reported that this fire has gone off. And it was so hard to look away, but it just got, every 10 minutes, it was almost like it was multiplying.
And really quick, not to interrupt you, but here in Southern California, wildfires is commonplace, right? I mean, over the years, there's a wildfire story almost every year, somewhere, somehow. So what's that any different from any other wildfire over the years? Am I correct?
And fortunately, I've only been here for 5 years. So like I wasn't here for the Woolsey fire. I've heard about other ones, but I've also heard from people that have lived here for 50 years, like our gardener who had never seen anything like this. And Steve as well, like mentioned the same thing. So I started taking out my phone to let my team know. And I realized that I was taking these pictures. The wind was picking up, and it was almost like everything was happening in slow motion. My immediate thought was, okay, this is getting really big. I'd never seen smoke like this in my life. I need to call my friends that are out in Topanga, because to me, I didn't know exactly where it was coming from. And I was like, but
Canyon country, right?
Our community is in Topanga. So 2 friends that weren't even home, no one knew that this was happening yet. And you wanted to believe it was just temporary. Called my friends, they came to my house. They felt really unsafe. And my dog was the one who was giving me the signals that it wasn't okay. Wow. And because she had never done this before, but she went home and she it's not like there was a loud noise or that the wind was knocking at the door, but there was just like an unsettling, and she came in and she hid under my bed. And that night, my friends did not feel safe, and so we drove towards San Clemente. We got a hotel. I told the team to shut down, and I woke up the next day. We were on the news, and when we were driving down there, I made sure that they were okay to continue without me, because I knew that throughout the night, I was I just started making the plan of I need to create this into a shelter. It was just a matter of making sure that they were at peace. My team was at peace. No one really had to work. We sent messaging to our membership base, and then I called my dad, got really emotional, had to let it out. And he was like, you want to sign into my Home Depot Plus account? And I was like, yep. And then from the parking lot, our event coordinator, I had her make a social media post that went viral about us becoming a donation center. And, thank God I just wasn't in the place where I had to go through checks and balances. Asking permission was not an option at that moment. It was do right now or don't do at all. Shout out to Mission Viejo Home Depot. They were incredibly helpful. They helped me load a generator into the back of my car, oil, gas, 5 fire extinguishers, fire blocks, fire blankets.
What kind of car is this?
I have a lifted Jeep 2004 Grand Cherokee.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's
So
better than the Montero.
It
my brother built
fits
it.
a lot more. It fits all that plus
And
more.
you know what the craziest thing is? I tried to sell it 6 months ago. The guy flaked on me. And so it was like I was meant to have this car also during this time. So put the hoses in the car. I fireproofed the space when I got back that evening. This was Wednesday evening. Had our production team that would typically be in the podcast room help me bring the generator inside because, again, so much of my team came from COVID testing, like disaster first response. So come in here, put the generator in. The next morning, I didn't have anyone that like confirmed they were going to drop off stuff. I just had a post, but it started to be shared around town. And someone brought in a water container at 8:30. By 9 a.m., we were completely filled with stuff. We had no team. I had no plan. We had no departments. We didn't have a Slack channel. Within 3 days, we had a Slack channel. I converted one Luma page into a donation link page. And we converted one Luma link page, which is an event platform, for a female founders market that was supposed to be that Saturday. So it's Thursday. We had an event for that Saturday. We turned it into a volunteer day on Saturday. That amassed to 150 volunteers within 3 hours. My phone was ringing off the hook and I couldn't manage answering the phone and the DMs and telling people, no, it's sold out. No, it's sold out. So we opened the floodgates to volunteers because you feel helpless in a situation that you have no control of. The fire was gaining so much momentum and we didn't know if we were going to be safe or not. The alarms were going off on our phone for like constantly different evacuation zones. So it was like, all right, people need to help. Put unlimited signups, 700 volunteers came in. And that was supposed to be for the Saturday event. But we had a full house on Thursday. By Friday, property manager came in, gave me a key so we could expand the operation. And we've had engineers, founders, movie directors, people that just moved here, people that didn't know anybody. There's no rhyme or reason to why people came and volunteered, but every single person came and it didn't matter where they came from, didn't matter what they did. It was like, can you lift this box? Great. And we then created communication channels over time to first responders on the PCH. So we were the main West Side hub that was serving PCH Palisades, Malibu, Topanga, then eventually Pasadena and Altadena. And the people around the area, like the brands that came together, the restaurants that came together to feed our volunteers, to distribute things to the first responders is just insane. And we had a team of SpaceX engineers that were our volunteers running our dispatch center.
That's so great.
And they put together all the different departments. They helped to create systems for shoppers. For example, some people don't want to be in person. They're in shock. They don't want to see anybody. They don't want to be vulnerable. So they would create a type form and fill out what they needed. We would put it in a box, print out the form, and then ship it to their homes with our drivers. Wow. So I could go on and on.
Okay. Well, first of all, I've got to issue a PSA. You had SpaceX engineers here helping save lives and respond to the community. Children at home, math is important. You will use it later on in life. And this is proof of that. You may save the next world, the world, just by making sure you pass that algebra test. But I digress. We're here on our special edition of Beyond the Plate. We've got our guests, Pastor Stephen Snook, as well as Savannah Aubinoe from Moss. And I wanted to, before we kick it over to Danny, I wanted to just touch on one thing that you just finished talking about, and that is the spirit of humanity that was endued by from the SpaceX engineers, from the people from industry, the entertainment industry, all those varied individuals. Going back to your story with Metropolis and Metro Cafe for so many years. But there's something that is riding in my mind because we're from Florida. So this is almost reminiscent of what we experienced during hurricane season. But something I just really would love for you to address for our audience is each and every person that's here, part of your team, your podcast team, all those that are here as part of your team in Moss. When all this is going on, you included, you left your homes. Wherever your homes were, they were unattended while you were here attending to the community. What was that like, that you just put yourself second to this community and serve? I just can't fathom the spirit of humanity that was taking place here through that.
Absolutely nothing else mattered. Nothing else mattered. I describe it with my operations partner during this operation, Roger, about how our background and coming from this like COVID testing operation, when there's a natural disaster like this, I mean, nothing. I was portaled into a different world. It didn't matter, you know, and I sent a message to my family 2 weeks ago, my whole family, this is what's happening. I could use your support right now. And they were all very supportive and just wished me well because they knew what I was about to do. But group chats, friend text, the members that were here, as much as I wish I could say, you know, it mattered to me and I cared. I was so fully about this mission that it was like, it spoke volumes to me about like why I'm on this planet. And our team also dropped everything to be here, despite, you know, one person being a little bit worried about the air pollution and another person not having transportation. They all made ways to get here. And it's fascinating because there's a lot of different volunteers that were like, what can I do to help? Do you need me? And then there's the people that just showed up. And the people that showed up were here for 2 weeks and it became a family. And I've never seen anything like it. And I think that Los Angeles really needs that in a way because there's such a divide between the East and the West, between the highways, and it takes so long to get places and the traffic is a mess and there's not centralized transportation and, you know, but people came from all over just to be here.
I felt that sense of community almost immediately because all of a sudden I see this family and then they're inviting me in. And she even acknowledged in that moment, do you feel it? And I'm like, yes. and she's, I mean, I knew that she had been here hours and hours and hours and for days and days. And when one of the other guys was like, yeah, like 12-hour days. And I think, but I didn't see any lack of energy in you or anyone else. It was just this like we're in this together. And again, while I'm here, people are bringing stuff in and people are taking stuff out, but they were taking boxes to distributing it to other places. And I didn't know where it was going. I just knew there was a lot going on. It was very
You were just here for a pour over.
You're going to tell them
You
to
just
stop?
need the kettle to pour over.
I
That's
have
it.
to say
No,
this too. I was expecting a Steve. That's a good
story.
This is the craziest part. So I was expecting a Steve from LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And he was supposed to be here when Steve walked in. And so I come downstairs and I'm like, are you Steve? And he's like, yes, how did you know?
Wow.
And then the other Steve just happened to be like an hour late. And he came later. And I was like, but I had already met Steve. Like, this was the only person I needed to meet. So, and the other person was extremely helpful and very kind. But it was just it was a surreal experience. Yeah. And I had wanted to do Sunday sessions. I heard Steve's story and I was incredibly inspired and also just so saddened to see, you know, a really real depiction of how it affected somebody on such a deeply personal level, and which is still hard to process. But with this offer and this presence of somebody coming in here in a space that was so energetically, you know, operating for the past 2 weeks, it was like a no-brainer of, okay, we'd wanted to do some sort of worship on Sundays, and it was just the perfect time and the perfect person to walk in.
Yeah.
Volunteering can go into so many different facets of life and so many different, it could be a natural disaster, or it could be a shelter, or it could be just helping someone in need, and normalizing that. What does it look like to normalize that and to give back and to process? And so this is a value-based space, right? I have a 10-question application for members to come in here. And one of the questions is, what is the change they want to be in the world and things like that. And so it's already at baseline, very conscious co-working space. But this, in 5 years of living in LA, I've never seen such consciousness and so much cohesion between those that are working on the front lines, those that are impacted, those that feel helpless and want to help. And just really solidified my love for Los Angeles.
The idea of community, you brought that early on, that's something you were experiencing here. And I think people are they're just dying for it. And as they were serving, they're experiencing that community, and we experienced that as well so many different times. But I think when you're talking about this meshing of, first responders, today we were being greeted by first responders that were just so kind. And yet there's purpose. And I think when we come back to that, all of us, we all want that purpose, but we don't want to have a purpose that's alone. Mm-hmm. We don't want to just sit behind a screen and say, look at, this is my purpose. It's got to be more. And if it's not relational, it's like we miss out. And I'm finding a lot of people here in Venice Beach, for some of you who don't know, this is a community that is where people find identity, and they don't look like anyone else. They don't dress like them or carry themselves. They can be themselves. And so to be able to have that's why I'm excited about making a co-working space for myself here. Because I'm like, how do I fit into this without bringing too much of me? Mm-hmm. But what does it look like to be able to do this and say, but let's continue to serve others as we each find our place and purpose. So it means a lot. I can't believe just a few days. I'm so excited. I've been telling everybody about what you're doing here. And now here we are.
You use that word purpose, and I want to take you back to episode 13 of Beyond the Plate. We're sitting on our podcast in our cushy studio, but this is nice though.
This is nice.
But I was in a pretty cushy office.
And you were in a pretty cushy office.
We're looking at the ocean.
Yeah.
That's not there anymore.
Exactly. You gave us a quote about purpose that I want to bring back to you because I think it's a kickoff to our next topic here. You said you and your son were having a conversation. This is back in 2016, Metro Cafe, Metropolis, Metro Collab. It's a matter of faith. And if we're committed, then we're going to make it about people. Yeah. And you talked about purpose. And I think back then, that purpose is still following you today. God hasn't changed his plan, his purpose. What does that say to you now, given the situation you're in? Because I really would love for our audience to hear how you had this tragic situation take place where your home, the museum of your life, as I heard a broadcaster once say, the museum of your life is gone. And I don't mean to put salt in the wound, but the reality for everyone understanding as they're watching us here, but God has a purpose from back then that is still following you to today.
Yeah. I'm a pretty positive person, but I know during this time I needed to feel this. I had to take it in. And as I've been processing, my wife wasn't ready to go see the place until 2 days ago, and we went in together. And being in that moment with her and tears and us just being together in that moment, realizing that we had to be the recipients of a lot of love during this time. But when I looked around and I saw our neighborhood, my heart went to those people, because it's not about our homes. It's not that it was walking the dog and meeting the neighbors. It was hearing what's going on at because they just got out of the hospital. It was these things. And so I'm one of those people. But for me, I'm not one on the outside saying, I want to try to be empathetic and, oh, I'm so sorry you're going through that. And I'm going to say all the right things and lean in a little bit and say, oh, and I don't want to, I just know that it's not about my story alone. But my story is important, and what I'm feeling is important. This is my family. I want to take care of them, but my heart's breaking for my neighbors. My heart is breaking for the people that I meet that are so lonely, and they feel like like this is it, and everything is taken. They have no anchor of hope. So when we come back to this place of purpose, or we come back to this place that these are people, it's acknowledging that I'm one of them, but I'm a part of a community that I want to heal through this process and see restoration. I was working through something earlier, this idea, people are trying to make I heard someone say, in a little too much Christian, I'm a pastor, okay, so, but a little too much like in your face guy with 3 million views on this video. Well, you had the Golden Globes and 5 days later, the fire. What does that mean? And I'm like, are you kidding me? So it's just like the gritting the teeth, or people want to make it like we're Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm like, you don't understand the heart of God, I don't think. And it's not me to judge them either. It's just that in this time, we are people grieving, and they have nothing to hold on to. But for some of us, that our hope and our treasure is not in these things, we better live it out in a way that they can see that we have something that gives us a peace that's not going to get taken away because of a fire. We're going through this, and we're coming out of this. And so, yes, I think that there's some things in this that is causing a greater passion and a greater love for LA. Mm-hmm. This is where I'm called. This is where I live. This is my kids. This is home. And so I want to rebuild. Mm-hmm. But, it's not coming quick, and that's okay. So can I embrace this and use this as a time to get my eyes off of myself, but not to forget myself?
We saw your neighborhood today. We had the chance, and our audience will visit it as well. It's ashes. It's ashes at the moment. How is it you're going to rebuild that neighborhood and the strength to come back, the hope, the knowing that one day it might not stand the same as it was before, but it's going to be mine again?
Yeah. Well, if I can stay in the moment, if I'm not going to worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow's got enough worries of itself, I'm not going to be anxious about this, but what if I can be in this moment? So when I went at 7 a.m. to Mel's Diner to meet with a group of people that we pray every Friday morning for the community and praying for God to do something only He could do. I walk in, and one of the heads of one of the departments for the state that I need to talk to, but you can never get to the head of the department. He's going to sit down, and I said, I see that there, and I have a couple of questions. I'm so appreciative. I had to drive to Riverside to get some information from you guys, but you know what? Can I ask you a question? He goes, yeah. And he goes, in fact, when I began to ask the question, I told him where we live. He says, after we finish, we're going to your neighborhood. And he told me exactly what it would look like to rebuild. And he says, don't think it's happening quick. Yeah. And it may not happen because of some circumstances with your neighborhood, which is a mobile home park at the beach. Because if the owners say we don't want to go back, then 178 people but may not be able to go back home. But right after that, someone that I know, a part of our congregation, walks in, and they are meeting a firefighter there that's taken them in to see their house. For 3 generations, they've lived there. So I can say, how am I going to rebuild, and focus in on that and say, how am I going to do it, and what's going to look like, and how much it's going to cost, and what did I lose? Or I'm going to realize, God, you met me this morning at 7 a.m. with the head of this whole state agency that gave me what I needed, and I got to see someone else who needs you to be with them today, more than just a firefighter that takes them in. So God is like, I'm going to be in the moment today, and then I'm going to just take you what you need. And I'm going to provide for you, but you've got to trust me. Lean not on your own understanding. Trust me with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge me, and I will direct your paths. I'm going to hold on to that scripture. I'm not letting go, that God works all things together for good, and that And God's like, I'm going to work this out, but you've got to trust me. And because you're going to meet Savannah a few days before. And then you're going to meet someone tomorrow that you weren't expecting you're going to meet. And I got a place for you to go when you leave the hotel. But right now you say, how's that ever going to happen? But I could either get caught in what's the future going to look like. I just know that this is my home and I'm not going anywhere and we're going to rebuild together. But together is looking like a different picture, huh, Savannah? It's all these people who have never been brought together, but that's a beautiful picture of diversity and just seeing we're going to do this.
God loves LA, God loves Santa Monica, and God loves Pastor Snook and Savannah and Moss. There you go. I'm going to go on a limb there.
No, that's
a strong limb.
Hashtag facts.
Strong limb.
Diversity. We were out in Santa Monica Pier earlier.
Yeah.
And you were kind of showing us the landscape of Pacific Palisades as far as I could see and what we could kind of see from where we were. And then you talked about your son had mentioned having something on the beach, and having Christians, non-Christian, Jews, every walk of life. Why is that so important in this Why is that? I mean, listen, you're a pastor, a Christian pastor. Just get the congregation together. Why is this so important to open the arms wider to let more in?
So I think we're all created in the image and likeness of God, all of us. And the picture of heaven is every tribe and tongue, every nation, that's a picture of heaven. And between this idea of everyone created in the image and likeness of God, we are broken. Every one of us are broken. So our picture sometimes of Christianity or any one of the big world religions or whatever, religion overall, sometimes becomes a little bit too much like us and not much like I think what God is. So if Jesus is the embodiment of God, then he has given us a picture of the way he treats a woman that's caught in adultery when everyone else wants to stone her. There's a lot of that going on now in the name of Christ even. But that's not what Christ did. He said, whoever's without sin, go ahead and cast the first stone. And they all walk away. And he says that they don't condemn you, neither do I. And he said, but you can't just keep living this way. I mean, he was honest. Mm-hmm. A woman at the well, it's like, you can give me a drink of water, but I could give you some living water. So if I'm looking at Jesus' values and Jesus' message and Jesus' model and Jesus' style, and I say that we're to be embodying that, then we don't say, let's get a bunch of people who believe like I believe and we'll take care of you. If I'm going to love my neighbor as myself, and my neighbor, when Jesus told the story, my neighbor is someone of a different race and religion, is the story of the Good Samaritan that most people know, even if they're not religious. So we said we're throwing a party at the beach, and a bunch of people we're going to do a barbecue, we're going to bring a taco man, we're going to bring all this stuff, and it's for my neighborhood to feel the love, and then we're going to move on to the next neighborhood. But I have a place to start. But we can start doing that in many neighborhoods. And people are like, how are you going to fund it? Well, I started going to my brother who's standing over here and some other guys that are in Orange County, kind of the mecca of, the Bible Belt of California, and say, are you guys going to support this? So we've got our resources, but we're not afraid to ask other people, like Savannah's not afraid to ask other people, and people just keep flooding in. So to care for people that may be a little different than us is to show the love of Christ by not just vomiting the message of like, just get this right and you could have what we have, but maybe the message of Christ. And that means we go back to his model, not what someone else has tried to create in their image instead of his. So it's a long answer to that, but that's where my heart's at.
No, it's the right answer. That's great. Savannah, the same for you. I'm sure you're not just getting rocket scientists and entertainment executives, tech executives. There is a wide array of individuals that need wellness, that need healing, that need to be made whole. If it's a pour over in a kettle, or it's a blanket, or it's just a pair of shoes, because the ones that they've had on for 2-3 weeks, however long it's been, is just worn. What has it been like to see just a wider variety of this community show up here at Moss, Venice, California? I mean, amazing.
I've never seen it. And I think there's a lot of stereotypes of this place that people believe on the East Coast and different parts of the country, different parts of California. I remember when I went to school in the Bay Area, I was on a plane and there was a man reading a newspaper and he takes down the newspaper and he was like, "You been to SoCal?" And I said, "No." It was in 2012. And right before he put the newspaper back up, he said, "NorCal is like SoCal with books," right? And just, so there's these images that you can give as much truth to as you want. And then there's times like this that strip people of their human suit and the stories and the identities that they build up for themselves, whether it's to make a career or to make friends or to fit in with a community or a job or whatever that is. And that was the most beautiful part of it for me. And I think it's also, I don't know what anyone did. I don't know where anyone comes from, because that's not what it was about. And that's not what got people through the door. And that's not what got people to stay for pizza parties in the evenings. And, you know, if I could do this every day for the rest of my life, I would. Yeah. I would offer free classes. I would offer Sunday sessions. I would, so many things that I would do. But
now you got to decide, do I want to expand next door? And is the provision going to come? And the inspiration's here.
The inspiration's here. I think the need's here. And I think people need to be activated. And so activating an army of 700 kind souls is a full-time job in itself. But I've already had volunteers that have said, "I want to be a part of this. Can I work for you full-time? I'm leaving my job at SpaceX. This is where my heart is." And so as I'm processing on day 15, what is the next move? What is the right move? And just taking notes and sitting on that and seeing the most effective ways that I can expand as a business.
Before we wrap up and we kind of end our time here, Pastor Stephen, I want to really take us to the Sunday sessions that's going to take place in collaboration. This Sunday sessions. It's not church as usual, right?
No, in fact, I think this is us stepping out of the box, and she really confirmed it the other day to me. My neighbors need to be together, and they need to tell their story of how this has affected them. And they need someone to listen. But this Sunday sessions isn't about the other people to listen. I think it's really more about inviting my neighbors of all different faiths and their views on life and lifestyle to be able to say, we are family, let's come together. They know me. I've spent a lot of time with them. We've worked through some tragedies in our neighborhood, and we did it together before this ever happened. So when they come, and to be able to just sit and experience this place with the peace here, but to be able to just say, how has this affected you? And for us to be ready for the tears, and to be able to, and maybe anger and frustration, and for them to say, I'm mad at God. Why didn't God protect us, or whatever? But they're coming. They're Jewish, Buddhists. They're atheists. They're all different kinds of lifestyles, kind of backgrounds, grew up in different countries, all different ages. When she began to paint the picture, I could see the picture of a group of people sitting in this whole downstairs area, and just to be able to listen, and then to say, well, let me share something with you, and allow that open discussion, to allow some of those questions. And I think it's got to be organic, but I realize I've got a model. Jesus is this model that people where he might be sharing something and they're interrupting with questions. So that doesn't happen in church today. They'll be like, sit down, get out of here. I mean, I think let's see what it looks like. And I think there ought to be a point, Savannah was like, you're not the right guy or whatever to help facilitate this. But if God's in it, I think we're going to see that he's going to navigate in the first week. Because she said it's a week from Sunday because they were doing some things here over the weekend. They had to close down. But then she yesterday, today, I don't know. I lose track of time. She goes, hey, it's open. Let people know.
Yeah. And
now it means, just like all this happened in the last 2 weeks and 2 days or whatever, this is going to happen by me just putting the word on a WhatsApp to all my neighbors and saying, listen, I know you guys are coming from different places, but here's a place where we can be together. So we'll see.
From the ashes, you're, I think, building a greater community.
Yes.
For the future.
We were pretty tight
again, before the fires, there wasn't a lot of contacts that were being shared between us four here and everybody else that that you've seen along the last few weeks. So it's an amazing thing. Again, there's nothing that we can plan for. And again, nobody wants a fire to bring family together. There's so many other reasons we can bring family together, but devastation, it kind of puts everybody in the same path, and it's great that we're meeting people that are actually changing families in a matter of time, not having to wait a week or 3 weeks or something to return to your own home or whatever's left, right? This conversation is inspiring and nourishing my soul, as well as everyone in this room. And almost every episode, we like to end it on a positive note, right? But because of that positive note, and the theme that we got going on, this is actually from episode 13 that we had with you, Pastor Snook, and it was regarding the Olympics that are coming here to LA soon, 2028, but I think after this is probably going to be even better, bigger, stronger, no? And you had mentioned that the Los Angeles is ready for the games, for decades. This has been a place where God has done some great things over the years, but it kind of just goes off somewhere else. Azusa Street, it's a revival. CRU Ministries, which is on the campuses. There's been all these amazing things that have happened, and so this is a time we're saying, God, would you do something in your church as we unite around your mission? And I think what's next is that we are uniting in prayer. We are uniting people in serving the community and serving one another, and that means we just lay down some of those things that we got to let go for the sake of something bigger.
Wow.
You said that.
I hear you.
You can say, wow, you did say that.
But
and this was before we even
so here we are.
Yeah.
So the greatest natural disaster in American history, they say now. And let's see what comes out of the ashes. I read, the whole story from Greek mythology of the phoenix coming out of the ashes. But there was one of the early church fathers, he said that my faith is built on one who's come out of the ashes that gives us something that is never going to end. And so for me to hold to this and say, what do I treasure? These things that can be burned up, that can be stolen, that moth or rust can destroy, or am I going to invest in treasures in heaven? So no matter what, or my socioeconomic place, no matter what my background is, when she was telling me, I'm like, I'm pretty impressed. She wasn't going to go into it, but she goes, we were able to scale like 52 different COVID things. I heard you. And I'm like, but God, you had a bigger plan for her, and you had a bigger plan for me, and all of us. We just got to find what is God's assignment for each of us in this season in our lives, and to be able to hear it and be willing to step out and say, I'm not too old, I'm not too young, and I'm me. I'm going to end with something I want to share with you guys. 2 days after the fire, I got to go back to my neighborhood with my son and one of my sons and my daughter. And I had a safe that was there, and it's supposed to be fireproof, but everything was gone. But this is the ring that my wife put on my finger in 1987 when we got married. And it's very black and still smells like smoke. But when the Bible says, you be careful how you build. You build with wood, hay, and stubble, it gets burned up. But it's the precious jewels and gold and silver that are being refined. So this is a time of refinement, and I'm willing to say, there's still more in me. But I walk away with this ring that reminds me of this, that someone said the other day, are you going to get it all polished up again because it's gold? I'm like, no, that's going to stay right the way it is. It's just a little too 1987 to wear, though. You know what I mean?
I love it.
But that's part of this story. So let's see if we can. I don't think we need to be in the lead, though. We need to be following, but we just need to know who we're following.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you. Well, we're not done with this conversation here in Los Angeles. We have a part 2 of this 2-part series, a special edition of Beyond the Plate. So stick around, like, subscribe, and definitely share this. Share Moss in Venice, California with your friends and family out here in SoCal, West LA, even the East LA folks. I got some family in Huntington, Orange County. So
All are welcome here.
all are welcome here.
All are welcome here, and we'll have some complimentary events at Moss Venice for some time to come. And stay tuned for Sunday sessions.
There you go.
Amen.
Thank you.
Fist bump.
Come on, we'll bring it in, everybody. Fist bumps.
Bear Brews! Picture this. You're brewing an incredible craft beer, but entering the non-alcoholic market feels impossible. Well, we're talking about too much cost, too much risk. Sound familiar?
That's where Bear Brews rolls in, literally. They're your mobile partner for advanced de-alcoholization and pasteurization. Say that 5 times fast.
Can't.
No capital investment, no hassle, just results.
Their mobile tech lets you create non-alcoholic beer without losing that flavor your fans love. Same beer, huge new market.
Oh, and here's a game changer.
All right.
They recover the alcohol byproduct. You can use it to create seltzers, cocktails, you name it. More products, more revenue. Bear Brews!
Based in North Carolina, Bear Brews works with craft breweries like yours. Whether you're brewing 2,500 barrels or 200,000, that's a lot. They bring the tech to you.
Want to test the waters? Oh, I see what you did there. They even do small batch trials to prove the market, no upfront costs, zero risk.
So, stop putting that non-alcoholic market and seltzers on hold. Bear Brews is here to help you grow without breaking the bank.
Ready to grow your craft brew empire?
Sure am.
Visit bearbrews.com right now. That's bearbrews.com.
The mobile tech, the results, the partnership. I'm talking about Bear Brews. Let's make your beer the next best thing.
Well, I'll applaud to that.
Yeah, cheers to that.
bearbrews.com. That's BARE brews.com.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to Beyond the Plate. We love having you here.
Keep up with us on Instagram and TikTok at beyondtheplate.podcast.
And if you enjoy the show, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and give our videos a like. Just search Food for the Poor Beyond the Plate.
Your support means the world to us.
All right, folks, we'll see you on the next Beyond the Plate episode.
I'm waving.